exhaustive list. It's just a few of the great central midfielders that are playing in the Premier League. One of the all-time greats, Roy Keane, is one that you work with a lot. What does he say that a great central midfielder needs to have?
Everything with Roy. You know what I mean? I think that he still gets a little bit, like, he's still spaced out by the fact that people say, oh, he does this specific job in midfield, or this specific job, like he's a number 10, he's a number 8, or he's a number 4. For Roy Keane, you have to be able to do everything, and that's why when he sees a midfielder do everything, like a lot of those guys on that list can, he really does get infused about them, and so do I, because I believe when we were younger, a midfielder he did have to be able to do everything, and I think what's happened as time's gone by, you can play one specific role. You can be a number 10, where you're not really as industrious getting back, or you can be a number 8, you might be able to do them both, box to box, or number 4, or you just protect the back 4. But, like, for me, and I'm with Roy, you should be able to do them all, so that if you find yourself in that position at any stage on the pitch, you can deal with it.
Is that the key to the position, Karen? Not necessarily always doing everything, but having that to be in your tool bag?
I think the way the modern day game's going, everyone's so versatile, formations, changing, fluidity, but you're in the middle of the pitch, you're the spine of it, you are that holds everything together, the glue. And to have all those elements, you do, and I agree with Wright. I don't think you should just be singular, really good in that one position, because if you're a defensive-minded player that breaks a play, well, a lot of the games now is you've got to be exceptionally good on the ball as well, and, you've got to be able to have the ability to defend as well, because if you're one player down, I know I hate to keep digging them out, but like Man United, if you don't defend from the front, well, you don't defend right, you're going to get punished, so... But for me, the player I think's most in form, and the person I constantly think about at the moment that's got all elements and he's grown, is Declan Rice. I'm such a huge fan of him, and I've watched him live a few times, and he's one that really straight away came to my mind about the most in form in the Premier League at the moment, I believe.
Because he talked there about trying to add more, more elements of going forward, maybe trying to add more goals to his game. And so even if you start off with a certain level of ability, it's always about adding and improving.
Well, that's it, and that's what Wright's saying. You can't just be that probably Declan Rice last year, and probably how West Ham played more defensive, counter-attacking football. Now they're trying to transition to be more. He's now got to go on and go, right, a midfielder, I've got to add those elements to the game. I've got to have all-roundness. But this is the side of his game that's improved a lot. Driving and taking people on, and now the next element is probably like the Stevie G element, where you go in and you get goals from outside the box. But at the moment, I struggle to think who's better and informed than him, and what he does to this West Ham side. I think West Ham are great. They are really, really good, but you take him out, for me, they'll fall apart. He's that good.
I think that what you looked at when you saw that list is the possession one, interceptions, and, the progressive passing. That's what it's about. You see him there, and in both of those clips, he's in a position where he's in advance, and he himself will probably say, yeah, I'd like to maybe get more goals. Because when you look at the interceptions, top class, passes, top class, but then you want to see the goals as well, because I think that he adds goals to that, and we're talking about perfect. We're getting perfection. All of his stats, he was first. So we're talking about somebody that knows and recognises he can still do more and wants to. And that is good for England. I'm delighted for him at West Ham, because I'm pleased that he's the captain there. They're getting to play European football. He's playing international football. He's doing it all well. And he wants to be on that West Ham train for a couple more years, because people are constantly saying, oh, he's got to leave. He hasn't got to leave West Ham at the moment. And what he's doing is getting better with every game.
Karen talked about the confidence that times, earlier on, about the confidence that managers have to be able to allow players to go forward and to let them off the leash a bit. Is that what's happening at West Ham under David Moyes? Because he's not a manager who has done that, particularly in the past, particularly against teams that would be called the traditional Big Six, or whichever the team towards the top of the table would be. He hasn't done that. But there is just the space for Declan Rice to do that now. Yeah,
absolutely. He's evolving as a player. David Moyes, in some respects, is evolving as a manager, just like the point you were making earlier about, when you move on to different clubs, if you have not done so well at a previous club, maybe you look at what you've done, or maybe the people around you, are they the right people in your ear? And certainly for Declan Rice's game, he is the right person, because he isn't just a destroyer. He's somebody who can create. He's got a fantastic shot on him. he's an influencer, and if he adds those goals to his games, then he goes some way to improving those stats that we saw a second ago even further. I think certainly when you're in print industry, with the written press, what you're looking for is consistency. And when you go to games on a weekly basis, whether it's the Premier League, the Europa League, the Champions League, the domestic competitions, and you're getting the same level of performance from someone, that's what marks them down from all the rest. And that is why so many people are talking about Declan Rice.
In terms of consistency, has there been anyone more consistent over the years than Ngolo Kante?
Nope. And we're talking about like Leicester, then Chelsea, then France, what he's done. Somebody that, you know, he's one of the best defensive midfielders. We saw when he was under Sarri that, yes, he can get forward, and we've seen as well that he can get forward and score goals. You know, obviously we know that his best position, and what we see him do is just break up play and progress the ball, which is for me the best in the world at doing that. But I don't think I've seen a player and watched a player that I admire so much in just the way he goes about his business. I would have a picture of Kante just in my house, just to walk past.
If your wife let you.
When you walk past and you just see his face like that, it just literally makes you happy.
Open your wallet, and the picture of N'Golo Kante.
N'Golo Kante.
You've got no money in there, but you got a picture of N'Golo
Kante because he makes me happy.
Going away on trips, little photo frame next to the bed.
Watch the way.
That's my sun lounger. Can't you see the picture of N'Golo Kante on there?
No, so you get to a hotel and the first thing you do is put the N'Golo Kante picture on the sideboard. No, he's somebody that he's fascinating. He's unbelievable to watch what he does, and every single team he plays for, they adore him and the way he is. And like I say, he's easily one of the best I've seen. You know, they called it the Makelele or whatever, but N'Golo Kante, he's got to have some kind of position named after him. Midfield should be called the Kante position.
But it is something that he has made his own, isn't it? As much as it was defined by Claude Makelele, it is now the Kante role, because he's taken it on even another level.
Yeah, but the thing about, like, the best players make everyone else better. And that's what he does. He makes everyone else better because he does the things probably no one else wants to do. And, you know, at the top teams, everyone wants to go and do all the nice things, attack, you know, not do that. He does all the stuff and just makes everyone else go and express himself. That's why no one can get the best out of Pogba unless it's next to him. Because he just makes everyone else around him so much better. And from being at Chelsea, the times that I've seen him, he was just constantly smiling, really humble, just a good guy. And you're like, oh, God, how annoying. You're amazing at your job and you're a great person. It's just like, you're right, get a photo, seriously, righty. But, yeah,
but he hasn't just played in that position either, as you were saying. You know, he has been moved around, and he can do it. Maybe not at the same level that he plays in that most familiar of his roles, but he can do it anywhere. He can do any of those central midfield roles.
Yeah, and what like I say, the problem is that when we saw him doing it with Sarri, Chelsea at the time were quite leaky. They had Jorginho playing in there, and I remember watching a goal against Spurs, and it was a position where Kante kind of cuts that out, whereas Jorginho couldn't get across, and you're thinking, why is he over there? And as much as you could see with his ability, of course he can progress the ball, he can pass, he could do, but he's better there. He's better doing that, and then you could get Jorginho doing something like that. That's what I was confused about. I'm not saying like he's not world class in that position, but I know for a fact he's definitely world class in stopping play and progressing the ball. So play him in his best place. But you know, and we've seen him score goals. You know, he can do everything, and he smiles doing it.
I think with that, when he played higher up with Sarri, it's because he's so good at winning the ball back. He wanted to win it higher up. And that's what it was. But you're right. But as a player, you know you can play more. But when you've been so institutionalised in that role, it's just where you're happiest and where everyone else wants you. So he can do it, and there was obviously tactical reasons, but he's far better off where he was. On
Jorginho, I'm not going to say a bashing there, but you know, maybe a slight knock in terms of some of his performances. Has that moved on now? Have we moved on from that stage, given that he is a Ballon d'Or nominee?
I think he's consistent, but not in quite the same way as Kante. He doesn't really do it for me. He's a fine player. He's got good technique. He's obviously good from dead ball situations, but he doesn't have the energy that Kante has. He doesn't have the protective instincts that Kante has. He doesn't give you that security, in my opinion, that Kante does. And that a lot of people might be watching and say, look, I see different things, and that's okay. It's subjective. But I just think, for me, with Kante, we looked at that graphic and we saw the different things that he's won with different clubs and the way that he stepped up and up, because he came from Cannes to Leicester. He's cost, what, £5 million. A terrific signing, helped that team to be defensively strong enough to win a fairy tale title, then goes to Chelsea, then helps them do that. When he was pushed further forward, they just weren't as good. They weren't as secure. And that's what he gives you in comparison to Jorginho. We've got to understand
as well, when you look at, was it Wes Morgan and Robert Huth, and he was protecting them with Danny Drinkwater. And you look at Leicester and we're all thinking, well, how are Leicester doing this? It's because Leicester, out of the blue, they got Kante, Mahrez and Vardy with experienced players around them. And that is why they were able to do it. We're talking about three, for me, world-class players that nobody else really knew about. That is why Leicester happened. And he was the main reason why that was happening. Because you could not watch Leicester without noticing what Ngolo Kante was doing. You're just thinking, wow, who's this guy and where's he come from? Can he continue doing this? Look at Mahrez, my gosh, where's this guy come from? Another player come from the second division of France. And then we saw Jamie Vardy, you know, got to the Premier League when he's 27 and just blasted it, especially in that season. So three players at Leicester side, well, you have to say, literally world class. And he's gone on to prove it even more. So too as Mahrez and, for me, Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, it's interesting when we talk about Jorginho that it's in the shadow of talking about Kante. There's always going to be that comparison with one of the all-time greats.
Yes.
I think the thing is I'm a fan of Jorginho. But if you put Jorginho in the Leicester team, would he have had the same impact? You know, in the France team, I don't think he would either. But he's an exceptional, intelligent player, and he doesn't have, without being harsh, doesn't probably have the speed. So his speed of thought has to be significantly better, and he's tactically really, really step ahead. But for me, if he went into those other teams, he wouldn't have the impact that Ngolo would. And that's why I'd probably put him above Jorginho. I love him. And he's won things, won Champions Leagues, won with Italy this summer.
Will you get a picture next to your son lounge?
No, I think still with Ngolo, I think. So, but yeah, I love Ngolo. And I would probably prefer to play with Ngolo, probably because of how I played. I just know how valuable he would be to me to make me a better player.
Even without seeing the rest of the people we're going to use, Ngolo Kante will be my number one midfielder, whoever we choose here. Because when you look at the rest of them...
Well, there's the jeopardy out the window.
Because the thing with N'Golo Kante is that they will be able to do maybe offensive things, but what he does for the whole of the team and stuff, it's always going to be... If you have to put the first name on at them, it probably would be him.
Let's just see who we've got up our sleeves then.
Go on, then.
We've got a few more players that we are going to be talking about. I want to ask about Ilkay Gundogan as well, because, you know, this ability of... Because we've talked about probably the more defensive midfielders. You've got someone like Gundogan playing in that Manchester City side who's... I mean, not only is he great in central midfield, regardless of where you put him, he's also been in that false number 9 position for almost a whole season at Manchester City. And
done brilliantly. You know, he says that he's not really about continually scoring goals like we saw him do that, you know, in that season where he was literally unbelievable in that false 9 position. But when I've seen him for Germany as well, you think, oh my God, this guy is such a good footballer. He's such a good footballer. I was surprised with the goals that came with him. I didn't realise he had that. But then when you watch not only with the goals, but the way he plays, the way he keeps the ball moving, that, you know, it's the quality that he has. You know what I mean? It kind of went under the radar until he'd done what he'd done with the goals and everything. And so now you're looking at me thinking, man, gosh, Gundogan as well. You know, but like again, Kante.
I've got more up my sleeve. Sorry. But look, his ability to adapt is almost the sort of definition of what we started off by saying, which is that a central midfielder has to be able to do everything. Well, he can do that and more.
Yeah, he's probably, out of the two we've mentioned previously, I'd say the more modern version of the midfielder. And also his work rate. That sets him apart. I'm not saying none of the others do, but I think when I looked at stats, I didn't realise how much he put in, because it's just the perception, just technical modern players just kind of float around, but his intensity to get about the pitch and bring other players at City with him is really key. But I think he's probably, out of two we've already mentioned, he's the more modern version, I would say. Yeah,
hard to stand out in that City side as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But his ability to get goals, that instinct that some midfielders just don't have, with a little bit why I was asking about Buendia under Gerrard, because maybe you can be taught that instinct, but he clearly has it for club and country. I would definitely have him in the mix.
In the mix, but maybe not as high up in the mix as N'Golo Kante, also possibly Kevin De Bruyne, because that was the joker I was keeping up my sleeve. Not that he's a joker, but it was like I was keeping it up my sleeve to kind of, because as much as you love Kante, Kevin De Bruyne is he not even close to being a challenger? And also, you mean he doesn't always play in the centre of midfield, of course, as well.
And we're talking about an offensive midfielder of the highest degree, I think, with Kevin De Bruyne. And, it's unfair with how good Kante is doing what he does, because then you have to say De Bruyne as a number 10 or in advanced is unfair on the rest of them, because he is, for me, easily one or two, three amongst the three best midfielders in the world. Kante is one of them as well, by the way. So, but offensively, some of the things he does as a striker, watching him, it's you purr simply because you think, my gosh, he'd find me from there. That's the kind of player we're dealing with, But if we're talking about all aspects of the midfield, Kante can probably do them all. He's never going to be as creative as De Bruyne, but he can still do that job. Whereas if De Bruyne had to drop back and do what Kante done, it probably wouldn't happen. So if we're judging them on that kind of situation, then, it's always going to be Kante. But offensively, this guy is phenomenal.
Yeah, we're judging them on slightly different criteria, aren't we?
Yeah, I think the creativity is different. I mean, how he picks out passes, his deliveries, how he can whip a ball with his foot, it's just incredible. And he's any centre forward's dream, isn't he? He puts it right on the money. They never have to adjust their feet. The weight of pass is just brilliant. He can drive with the ball. But again, I'm such a fickle person going back to it now. I think Kante's done more internationally, though. And I think, the impact that he's had there, I've always wanted more from De Bruyne in the Belgium. So I know he's had his injuries. But I think, again, that's why N'Golo might tip it for me. But it's a joy to see Kevin De Bruyne attacking-wise in the Premier League, and he's just phenomenal.
So Kevin De Bruyne, when it comes to Qatar, is playing for a place further up our list.
Yeah.
Midfielder. I mean, look, you've got to find your motivation where you can. It's got to be there.
Imagine at one stage they could have actually, Kevin De Bruyne and Kante could have been in the same team.
Yeah, I mean...
Frightening. Frightening.
But look, it's Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, it's quite interesting, because I think if you took a poll of greatest Premier League players at the moment, Kevin De Bruyne might possibly top it.
He'd be in there.
And yet, when you put him up against Kante head-to-head, in the centre of midfield, it looks like Kante's edging it.
Well, the fascinating thing about Kante is if you were to put him in the Belgium team, they probably would realise their potential. Yeah. Because he would be so good in front of that back four. Well, they play with a three now, don't they? But he would be so important in that central midfield position in terms of his energy, protecting the central defenders. I love him as a player, left foot, right foot, dead ball situations, his ability to find you with a pass. I mean, I would imagine, would you compare him with Bergkamp when you played with Bergkamp?
Absolutely could. Obviously played with Dennis for many years and saw firsthand the mercurial things he could do. But on the outside looking at Kevin De Bruyne, you know what I mean? He does unbelievable things with the ball. So as a striker, he is a dream, because without even doing too much, he will find you with the ball. Dennis was the same.
When you watch him play for Belgium, he's never more than 5 or 6 yards away from Lukaku, and they always seem to be able to. When I watch his runs off De Bruyne, I do think of the runs I used to make.
Absolutely.
For
I used
Dennis.
to. You used to purposely. I used to put because Dennis would drop into that little hole, and I'd purposely make sure that where he goes, I follow on that line. So as then, you know what I mean, if he gets it, he's already had a look to see where I am. And if he's had a look, the ball's coming in, I know I need to come over here because he'll just turn it around the corner straight away. But I always try to stay in his line because I want to be close to him.
Was that like spoke about, or you just picked that up?
No, because like what happened is after a while you realise that, you know, he has the look. So he gets the picture. So he wants to make sure that when the balls come, you are doing what he needs you to do. And some of the times he might need me to be staying there because he just wants to turn it around the corner so I can lay it back off. And once he turns and he's facing me, he can put it either side of me. So what happens is that you get that understanding with players of that calibre, you adjust your game to them. You know, so as then they can do what they do. They can orchestrate. And that's what him and De Bruyne do. You have to change your game for them.
So could we say we're going to give 2 the best Premier League midfield awards? I just think...
You're determined.
I'll tell you why, because I think it doesn't sit right with me to say De Bruyne would very possibly top any poll of greatest Premier League players at the moment, and then for him to be second in a best midfielders poll doesn't sit comfortably with me. So I feel like in order to, rather than taking it away from somebody, let's just give more prizes.
Give more prizes out. Give more prizes out.
Especially when we know how much it means to them.
And the thing is that they both deserve it, and this is why it's so subjective. You know, people will say, what are you talking about, De Bruyne? What are you talking about, Kante? What are you talking about? The fact is that they both deserve the highest accolades that they can get for the calibre of player they are and what they bring to a team.
Lots to look ahead to then this weekend in the Premier League. For now, thank you very much to Karen and to Darren. I've just realised that they rhyme. For doing this today. We're going to be back at the same, and I've used that so much more if I'd realised. We'll be back at the same time next week. We're going to have so much to talk about next week because we'll have seen those new managers in action and what their teams have to offer this weekend. So lots to look ahead to. We'll be